Hi everyone, I'm Dan from JazzComposersPresent.com, an online space where composers, musicians, and listeners come together to celebrate the music we love. I'm joined today by Dr. Javier Nero, trombonist, composer, educator, leader of the Javier Nero Septet and the Javier Nero Jazz Orchestra. Javier is here to show us how to develop cohesive thematic material.
Hey, everybody. Thanks a lot for having me on here, Dan. And just to jump right in, this topic is something that's I've been thinking about constantly for like the last few years. Like, it kind of comes up almost every time I go and hear live music, especially if you're at a jam session or something like that. And the topic is kind of creating cohesion between the different sections of your compositions. And what ends up happening, I feel like, with a lot of composers and a lot of the way we arrange standards is a lot of times we'll just copy and paste a section that has really not much to do with another section. A good example of this is the All the Things You Are intro that we've all heard. Be-dee-do, king, be-dee-do, be-dee-do, be-dee-do. And then all of a sudden now we're into this beautiful, long, melodic, and harmonic phrasing of the way All the Things You Are is played. And the intro really has not much to do with the rest of the composition. And it really actually doesn't have much to do with the composition. That was just the way one group has performed that. And then it became somehow a standard way of performing that song all the time. But that song actually has a verse that's not played very often. And if you were to play the verse before you go into the A section, you would hear how that thematic material actually feels like it naturally leads into that a little bit better, as opposed to just like this 4-bar vamp that only happens copied and pasted in the beginning of the tune, and then all of a sudden at the end, when we're going to resolve from that E flat 7 to the A flat major 7, all of a sudden now we're back in D flat 7 sharp 9 zone, which is kind of like a completely polarizing type of sound. It sounds kind of dark and evil a little bit when the rest of the song is really about love, right? So we can pull up this first example. This comes from one of my compositions, one of my oldest compositions, and it's one of the songs of mine that I've kind of slowly gone back and revised over and over again over the years. And this is like a very like primitive way of creating that cohesion that I'm talking about, but I think that it still has some merit, and I think it'll help you create new sections of your songs that still feel like you're in the same sonic universe as the rest of the composition. So if you look at pickups into C, and we're in bass clef here, you have this first phrase, bo-do-da-bo-bee-bo-dee, bo-do-da-bo-bee-da. So it kind of iterates that same quarter note followed by 2/8 notes tied twice, and then now the third iteration, ba-do-bo-dee-bee-dee-bee-dee-da. Now it gets a little bit more complicated. And this quarter note to the 2/8 notes tied is kind of an element that I use throughout the composition, and it comes back over and over again throughout the song. But real quick, let's just listen to that real quick and see how that sounds in context. Be-do-dee, bo-dee-da. So we have like a little bit of like an intervallic type of thing that's happening. Up, down, back towards the middle, and then the second time, boom, and then we're going up and then back down. So, but then also the rhythmic element. Quarter note, 2/8 notes tied, and then another element that we'll talk about as well is the harmonic element. So you have all these different ways to kind of transmute these characteristics of a melodic fragment or motive in your composition, and you can really pull a lot of different material and a lot of ideas out of these simple ideas, and then but while still maintaining the full theme and idea of the composition, if that's clear at all. Let's check out the second example here. So this is really simple too. This is happening during the guitar solo. And another thing that I think happens a lot in jazz tunes, more so in modern jazz, like I feel like the older styles were a lot more conscientious about what specific composition was being played, as opposed to just thinking about everything as chord changes, right? So this is kind of a way, as a composer, I'm almost forcing the soloist and the rhythm section to remain anchored in the sonic universe of the composition. So that, like, this background comes in. This is one of the last of like 3 different sections. I start with the low trombones and low saxes, and then there's like 3rd and 4th trumpet and one of the altos, and then finally the lead trombone and the lead trumpet come in with this line here at letter O. And you'll see again at 124, pickups on the end of 3 there. So we have another similar element as like that melodic fragment that happened at the beginning. And it kind of, as you're listening to this, as the listener, it kind of it's reminiscent of the original theme of the song, but it's not exactly the same. So it kind of just reminds you that you're in the sonic universe of this particular composition, and we're still here, even though the soloist can go as far out as they want, but then we're still remembering that we're still here. We're playing this composition, and all of these things are interrelated. What I'm doing is I'm using small melodic fragments and trying to squeeze as much material out of those things in order to keep the composition feeling like it has some type of continuity and some type of cohesion, rather than feeling like here's this really cool 4-bar vamp that I wrote, and now I'm just going to place that here on this tune. And here's this cool little riff that I created at one point, and now I'm going to just copy and paste that here because it happens to be in the same key, or something like that. I'm trying to force myself as a composer to make sure that all of these elements have something to do with each other. So in the context of this composition, there has been a precedent set as melodically and harmonically, and creates continuity. So in the case of the solo, the synth solo that you just heard, these background figures kind of help anchor the soloist and the rhythm section, and also reminds the listener that we're still in that frame of mind, or in that universe, in that sonic place there. So this next example here is an example where I literally just used these different types of melodic fragments to create all these different lines that are kind of interweaving with each other. And this doesn't have a soloist behind it, but it has so much material happening at once that it actually ends up building into another shout section that happens later in the composition. So in that way, again, we're still anchored to the actual feeling of this particular song, as opposed to just feeling like we're just grabbing material from a different sonic universe and then just forcing it in. Basically, just to quickly summarize again, what we're talking about is we started with the original melody of the composition. So we have all of those elements there set up in the main melody, and that's plenty of material to really create a long composition. I think this composition ends up being around like 10 or 11 minutes long when you include the soloist. So don't feel like you need to just create something that's completely outlandish or something completely new. You have a lot of material. If you've already written a tune, you've already written a melody, you can really use all of those elements in there to create more material. And then that way the composition actually feels more cohesive from section to section, as opposed to feeling like it's one of those tunes where, oh, look at this cool 4-bar vamp that happens at the beginning of the tune, and then we forget about it and then it suddenly comes back at the end of the tune again for a drum solo, like a lot of these like kind of modern jazz cliches. This composition is going to be on my new record too, so I hope you guys can get a chance to check that out. It's called Kemet, and I recorded it here down in the Washington, D.C. area with a lot of really great musicians and players. We have some guest artists on there, Sean Jones, the trumpet player, and some great vocalists that are going to be singing with us, as well as probably a couple other surprise special guests. So I hope you guys get a chance to check that out, and you'll really be able to hear a lot of these compositional elements in real time when you listen to the compositions. So I hope this has kind of helped you figure out a way to get more material out of the material you've already written, and also create a little bit more cohesion in your compositions.
Thanks for watching today's mini lesson. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Drop any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos in the comment section down below. To watch our full-length events and participate in live Q&As with our presenting artists, head over to jazzcomposerspresent.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.